Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Villa. I'm here with the Cinema Wave podcast, and today we're going to be talking about the season one finale, and I guess season one as a whole of the Adult Swim show Common Side Effects. It's an animated, I would consider it a dramedy. Super excited to get into it. I'm joined today by Vinny Albano.
Hello,
And,
hello.
yeah, and let's get talking.
Yes.
Let's just go broad before we start to hone in on some of the specifics here. We had a earlier review where we sat down when this show was just starting. That must have been close to 8 weeks ago now, which is pretty wild.
Yeah.
Where we had really high hopes because I think this show started really strong. And the concern that we had was that Adult Swim has kind of a track record with animation to drop the ball pretty quickly after promising debuts. In my humble opinion, I think this shit sticks the landing the whole way through. I think it maintains a great quality and honestly might be the best thing they've done in a long time. I really, really enjoyed this show.
Yeah, I 100% agree. This is one of my favorite shows of the year thus far, and it just got better and better with every episode.
Yeah.
I mean, overall, just broad thoughts, keeping it spoiler free for anyone who hasn't seen the show but wants to get into it, I 100% recommend. Just stop the video and start watching it now, honestly.
Yeah.
Because the animation is beautiful. The art style is like that. It's a goofy kind of Adult Swim art style, but maintains a really, really high quality animation, and it's very serious. And the tone is just right between like comedy and really traumatic drama at times. And I just loved it. All the characters are unique, quirky, lovable. I mean, that last episode was actually getting me emotional.
Yeah.
And it's only been 10 episodes thus far.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think we have for such like a small runtime overall for like a season one of television. So we've got 10 episodes, 20 minutes each, 200 minutes. Let's do some quick math there. 200 minutes is about how many hours is that? 4?
Oh,
That's
math is not my good. Okay,
A little over 3. Okay, so I was close. Yeah, that's like pretty much just one movie, one long movie, and we get. I mean, I don't think we get too far into the overarching plot of this show. Thankfully, Adult Swim watched our first review, and that's entirely what caused season 2. You're welcome. So we have season 2 on the way. Super, super glad that happened because this is such a strange show. It sort of came out of nowhere. There wasn't a lot of promotion about it. The only way I found about it was actually like a YouTube recommended trailer that I got, which I feel like was just a really happy coincidence that I found it. Loved the concept, hopped on the show, and yeah, I everything that you were saying, I really agree with. I think tonally this is pretty great. I likened it to Barry in the first review, and I'm going to stick by that. I think this feels very tonally similar to Barry, where it's definitely a drama, which again is unusual for the network. But it has enough comedic elements to not make it like, a deeply kind of sad lock-in show. You can kind of watch this casually, you can have fun with it, but it's saying a lot.
Yeah.
And, for Adult Swim, as much as I enjoy a lot of their content, I'm sure as we've discussed in other reviews for other things, I'm such a stickler for themes as a writer. And this show touches on some themes that I'm just addicted to. I think like what they're talking about and the point behind this show and the messaging and how they do it is really just worth a watch for anyone. I think it's phenomenal stuff.
Oh, yeah. And what I love about it, piggybacking off of that, I know in our first review we talked about the whole show centers around Big Pharma, the exploitation of us as people by pharmaceutical brands, and just branches off into so many different categories from just that one kind of overarching message. But it never loses momentum, and it never becomes like too, I guess in the way I would say, for a lack of better terms, just because I can't find a better way to describe it, it doesn't become too preachy.
Yeah.
But that's not the best word to describe it, so I do apologize. But it's just that its themes are there to enrich the story and to motivate the story, but it's not purely the story. There's still so much to the characters and everything else going on in common side effects that is still so enjoyable.
Yeah, I think to your point, the characters don't feel like talking heads that are meant to kind of spew like an agenda at you, which
Exactly.
is
Yeah.
which is a super cool thing to see. Yeah, the lead cast here is really terrific. I think Marshall is an awesome protagonist. Francis has one of the more dynamic arcs that I've seen for a show that has this short of a runtime,
Yeah.
in a long time. I think all of the side characters that pop in and out are endlessly entertaining. We have, let's see if I can remember, Harrington and Kuso, I believe, are the agents that are pursuing
Yeah.
them. They're great. Their dynamics terrific, and again, like the shift and like the status quo breakup that we have for them is fantastic. It's a show that's not afraid to constantly change, and I think that's really something special because a lot of shows, we were just talking about Invincible.
Hmm.
A lot of shows are afraid to shift the status quo, and I think this show shifts it almost every episode.
Oh yeah.
We're pursuing these people, but it's definitely a journey, and the steps of the journey are so drastically different for each character. For example, we start the show. One of my favorite characters is Rick, who is presented initially as just this like bumbling idiot, hateable CEO type. Um, the way they characterize him though is so good where
Oh yeah.
he's like such a doof that he becomes like incredibly likable, and then you kind of get like insight into him actually being a person and like having some flaws and his own like opinions, and he starts to break away from this like very stereotypical tech CEO type. And then by the end of the show, he sort of like regresses right back into it, and he starts selling like a spray for the mushroom, goes on a long spiel about making a food spray, which is
Yeah.
hilarious. But yeah, I really commend this show for how much it's willing to take a character, throw them through the ringer, bring them back, and then throw them right back out and put them somewhere else. And
Hmm.
it never feels unnatural, which is
Hmm.
so hard to do.
Yeah, exactly. I probably my favorite characters out of the cast had to be Harrington and Kuso.
Mm-hmm.
Love them.
Yeah, they're pretty
They're
great.
so funny, and like you said, their breakup is so they're lovable. It's
Mm-hmm.
really like honestly, these are perfect examples of how to establish characters, how to establish like really interesting, unique characters without without. I feel like any audience can get attached to them. They're not like too, although I love my super weird and quirky characters,
Mm-hmm.
they're not like too quirky to the point where it like draws people off, but they have their quirks
Yeah,
and it's
like real
likable.
people.
Exactly.
They feel like real people for
Yeah.
sure.
And that's another thing too, is kind of piggybacking off of that thought, is every character, even the plot, although it's so absurd at times, feels so real and grounded
Yeah.
for an Adult Swim animated show.
No, I agree with you. I watched this
Yeah.
with my dad actually, which is so bizarre for him because he's not too into animated TV. But when we were watching it, he would like kind of mumble under his breath, like the way dads do when they're watching TV, where he's like, "Yeah, that's probably what would really happen." Whenever they were talking about like, these like shadowy figures that are kind of like running everything, that like if this mushroom existed, which is really the pivotal question that the show asked, is if there was a medicine that could cure everything, what would happen? Who would like be working towards it? Who would be working to destroy it? What kind of motivations would arise? And everything that happens in this show feels like something that would happen.
Oh yeah.
You have the people that kind of run the pharma industry that are immediately trying to capitalize on it for money. You have I don't really know what to call the wolf, right? What's his name? The guy who he's got the glasses on. He's like Rick's boss. What's his name?
I forget his name.
They call
but
him
he's
the wolf.
Yeah, he's the foreign one, the big capitalist.
Right. So
Yeah.
he's kind of like a world government type, like a very like Illuminati adjacent figure.
Yeah.
And he's someone who gives like this amazing speech about how, if there's a medicine that could heal all wounds, then like every war would become to the death or whatever, which is like, when you enter a show with the mindset that I had, which is that like, and I think most of the audience has, which is there's no downside to this medicine. Like if this existed philosophically, like just to make an argument, like why wouldn't you use it? But then he comes in and because of how strong the writing is, actually makes a compelling point as to why like a big scary government would want to stop that for a reason that's more complicated than money. Because a lesser show would just make a point about how the people at the top are greedy assholes, they don't care about the little guy, and that's why you're never going to be healthy. The show makes a point, even if you don't agree with that's compelling, and it makes you think, and it makes you actually like think that the writers really thought this out. They really played with this concept and they approached it from different angles. And when I start writing a story, I try and make all of my characters a different perspective on a theme. And that's really like my jumping off point. And this show really feels like they did the same thing. I feel like everybody involved in this cast has a different take on the themes, and they're constantly butting heads. And conflict is sort of the root of entertainment, and there's so much conflict in this show.
Yeah.
So much. And yeah, dude, just scene by scene. I really don't have much to dislike about it. I think it's just overall a great season of television.
No, same with me. I mean, going off of both points you made, the wolf, apologize, I don't remember his name either, but he's one of my favorite examples of character development because he's a douchebag. I hate him, right? Because people like that exist in real life, and I hate those people.
Right.
But it's so good. I am compelled, and I'm like, after that argument, I'm like, yeah, I mean, he does.
Right.
He does have a compelling point. But every point in the show, every perspective in the show has its pros and cons, and can be rebutted.
Yeah, like even Marshall, who's sort of our like opening into the world, right? He's our protagonist. He's who we're following, and he's like this inherently noble person who has a noble cause. Towards the end of the series, he falls in with Hildy and this like family that's kind of living out in the woods, and now they're actually doing it. Oh my god, like they have a whole bunch of mushrooms. They're capable of growing it. They're going to start selling it out, and then we immediately see that like even that like such a noble cause is going wrong. That it's becoming like a militia, and they're selling it just to fucking like drug dealers because they need to make money because they have to fund the operation. And pretty quickly we're seeing that it's becoming a business. So that the corruption is at a systemic level, and it's not just like these people at the top are evil because they're evil. It's because like the system that kind of revolves around a medicine like this brings about evil in people.
Yeah.
You know, and that's that kind of like discussion to be having in an animated Adult Swim show catches me so off guard every week when I would tune in, but it's fantastic. It's the best kind of being caught off guard where I'm surprised at how good a show is. And every week I feel like it got better and better and better. The animation is consistently fantastic. The music I think is really good. Visually it's just like stunning. The voice acting is amazing for a lot of people that I believe are like relative unknowns in the VA world. So let's talk about kind of how this wraps up, because I think that the way I kind of saw it was that the show seemed like they went into this thinking that like there's a good chance we're not going to get a season 2, so we kind of need to put a bow on things but also leave it so that like there's more story to tell. And I think it accomplishes that fairly well, but what do you think?
I was actually going to say the exact, like almost verbatim what you just said there. Because I think I'm very positive about the ending. Like if this was the only season that we got of the show, I wouldn't complain because it does have a nice bow on it, but there still are a lot of open-ended questions. You know, what's the deal with the portal, they call it, right? This other world, this hallucinogenic world, where then in the last few episodes we realize that world is somehow connected, like that it breaks that space-time continuum type beat. I don't know. I don't know the words. Yeah, I don't know the words. But yeah, so it's, you know, there's a lot of open-ended questions, and then also just all the cliffhangers that were left off on are fascinating, right? Like Hildy is putting the drugs into the water supply.
She's crazy as shit, dude. What are you doing? I literally I went bug-eyed at the screen on that, like, because it's like a 4-second clip. Just
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, season 2, she's drugging the water supply. You're like, oh, yo. But yeah, I'm so glad that you brought up that thing about the this like other dimension that they're implying, because for pretty much the whole season we're led to believe that this is basically like a psilocybin mushroom trip, where they're seeing shit. Things are getting a little hazy. You're kind of having like an out of body DMT adjacent experience, right? Um, and you're just kind of led to believe that it's all that. And even in these like penultimate episodes, when they're seeing the little guys, you're like, oh, okay, so it's like lingering effects, like an acid flashback kind of thing. But then they have that thing at the end where it's guiding him to Francis. So we know that there is actually like some kind of otherworldly force at play that's connecting to the mushroom.
Yeah.
And I, just personally, I did some research for a screenplay one time about the connection between like psilocybin, uh, sleep paralysis, and like hallucinations, and how people often see the same things, and they use that as a theory that a lot of the things that people see on drugs or on psychedelics are actually just peering into something that exists that you normally can't perceive. And it seems like the show is exploring that idea, but they don't do it in the first season, because I think the first season's all about like the global kind of effect that a drug like this would have. But to leave that door open for more for season 2, to further the discussion they're having around the mushroom and actually get into the titular common side effects of it and what it means and what's like really going on behind the scenes. I mean, like, that's a show that I'm desperate to watch, because with the writing that they're doing and everything they're talking about that's very real, I'm so into the idea that they're going to get very existential and like do this like crazy Joe Rogan theory crafting about mushrooms and
Yeah.
the other world and fucking DMT trips and shit. Like, I just love that. I think it's perfectly strange and out there, but so interesting to me. And rarely does a show both cover broad topics that I find interesting and have super intimate, dynamic character work. And this show does both, and I think that's really the two most important things that it could do, and it does.
Yeah, I mean, you put that better than I could
No, you
into
could
words.
do it, Vinny. Come on.
No, that was incredibly well put, and I don't want to repeat that, because you put it together so well, and I agree. It's really incredible. I also want to go back to the other cliffhanger that we mentioned briefly. The Rick is now selling the spray as like a cooking ingredient, as a additive for food. And the going back to the messaging and the themes, right? Exploitation of the masses by these big companies, people talk about it all the time, how you go in the grocery store, especially in America, and almost everything on the shelves, it's basically poison, right? And this is really strong. They could go in so many different directions. I could see now with the water supply and this, there's the entire world might start getting affected by this mushroom that was only found in one spot at one time. So, and that's another thing too. It could really represent how things like this. I mean, we saw it coming off of the back end of the pandemic. They spread rapidly.
Right.
It all it takes is one person, one thing, and then for something like to spread like crazy.
Yeah, and I want to highlight the use of the word exploitation there, where I think that the conversation that the show's sort of starting around this mushroom, or what I perceive it to keep doing into season 2, is that a little of something is usually a good thing and a lot of it is bad. And so like, I don't know if you're familiar with like the legacy of like Pink Floyd, but Sid Barrett was the original lead singer, and he made some incredible music with the help of psychedelic drugs. Then he took too many psychedelic drugs, went off the deep end, and then fucking completely cooked his brain. I could see the show kind of taking a similar stance, where yes, we have something that is like a beautiful, potentially helpful substance, which mirrors the real world again with things like psilocybin, which I think are helping a lot of veterans. I think they're doing like tests on trauma, and like it can be a healing thing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you could Sid Barrett yourself. So
Yeah.
I love that it's not straying away from that, and that the show is willing to be a little more complicated than, oh, it's a magic mushroom, it can cure everything. Like, it might be like, yes, but then, if we corporatize it, it doesn't matter what it is. Like, we will fuck it up if we do it wrong. And that messaging, I think, is just really strong, because that is true for everything. Everything that we have that we consider kind of magic, that we take for granted, I think is amazing until we overuse it. And I think you could say that about cell phones. I think you could say that about medication. I think you could say that about basically any like modern technology or whatever geopolitical idea. And again, like I'm realizing now talking about this that the discussion that we're having and like how interesting this is to me, in like a worldly sense and a philosophy sense, is conjured up by an Adult Swim animated drama comedy,
Yeah.
which kind of just blows me away that it's doing as much as it's doing to me. Like the effect that it's
Hmm.
having on me and the conversations that it's stirring up, and that I want to talk to people about what the show is talking about and the messaging it's put out, just really says to me that like it doesn't get too much better than this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was even thinking, like, what was the last Adult Swim show that did this?
Right.
And I I don't remember. I really don't. I mean, you have, in my opinion, I think Rick and Morty fell off like crazy.
Oh yeah, big time, dude.
Yeah.
Big time.
But even in the early seasons of Rick and Morty, they were like really highly regarded. People loved it. The fandom was crazy online and whatnot. And there was a lot of episodes that had something to say
Mm-hmm.
in a very similar way to Common Side Effects. But Rick and Morty always maintained like a very episodic, very goofy comedy, right? But Common Side Effects is really unique to the network,
Yeah.
and because it's a serialized series, and it's like you said, it's more in tone with something you'd see on Barry or HBO show,
Mm-hmm.
rather than Adult Swim. And I think that stands alone as a testament towards the praise of the show.
Yeah, it's
So
so mature. Yeah, I think it's
yeah,
the way that it's talking about what it wants to talk about and the subjects that it's covering
yeah,
are something that I think is pretty foreign to Adult Swim. And you bring up a good point with Rick and Morty. I think those earlier seasons do some fantastic stuff, with the writing and the messaging, where they have certain episodes where they'd be talking about like trauma or something, and they do it in a really like impactful way. But this is a show that isn't, like occasional moments of that subdued by comedy. That is the show.
yeah,
And if anything, it has occasional moments of comedy. It's sort of the inverse. And you're right. I think it's really unique to the network. And it's just seeping with passion. I think really every frame of it visually is seeping with passion. I can tell by the writing and the things that they're covering and what they're saying and the dialogue, these weird tangents that they go off on,
yeah,
especially with I keep forgetting the other agent's name, but Harrington and Kuso.
Kuso. Yeah,
The two of them go off on tangents all the time about like a shooting
yeah,
or like serial killers or like all this shit that just seems kind of like inconsequential to what's happening in the show, but it creates this
mm,
larger picture that like they're really talking about something here and they're really making a point and they're opening a discussion, and I'm just in love with that. I love media that does that, and I love media that I can go to where I can look at it and say that this is like not a show that exists to make me laugh, and it's not a show that exists for me to go, oh, this has a good plot. Like it's telling me something like on a wider level, and in that's a rare thing in a lot of
yeah,
media, and that's kind of what defines art to me. So yeah,
yeah,
I think like you can kind of tell by what I'm saying here that like this is pretty much like an essential viewing. I think if you
yeah,
love animation, if you're into any of the topics I brought up during this review, um, if you care about like current events and American politics, I think
yeah,
it's saying some great stuff. The character work, I'll sing the praises forever, so I'll kind of stop myself here. But I really, really highly recommend this. I also agree. I think this is one of the best things I've watched this year.
Yeah, it like you said, it has something to say. It has on top of something to say, it's a show that is always trying to uh up itself every episode in literally every element, writing and animation from the technical perspective and the writing perspective. It's always trying to up itself. And yeah, it's beautiful. I think we could go into scores because
Sure,
there's
dude.
really nothing else. I think we covered all of it.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if we want to get specific, like, are there any specific things that you want to talk about? Because I have one that I think is
You
a
go
scene,
for it.
a scene that really
Yeah.
stood out to me that we've kind of neglected to mention is So I remembered his name, Jonas, the
Hmm.
wolf. Um, his ending is fucking scary.
Oh yeah.
That is some scary ass imagery, and I again, last thing I expected tuning into this 11:30 broadcast on Adult Swim was to be fucking terrified by an episode of Common Side
Yeah.
Effects. But he ends up taking the mushroom, which, as you were saying before, is a terrific character arc. He goes from someone trying to destroy it to now he gets some kind of cancer or implied disease, and now he wants it immediately. So fuck you, asshole, right? But
Yeah.
he gets the mushroom, goes on this trip, and the trip is horrific. And he's like coming out of his own mouth, and I feel like it's baked in metaphor that I haven't unwrapped yet. But the actual like visuals of it are so disturbing, and they
Oh, yeah.
reminded me. Now I'm not a big anime watcher, but it gave me the vibe of like a Junji Ito kind of situation that was going on.
I could totally see that. I agree with you. It was just really cool.
It is
Honestly,
really cool.
it is really cool. And going back to, I know you said like baked in metaphor. As of now, it's not a critique, but it can be a critique.
Hit me.
Is that every single time they go into a trip, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even with Jonas's character at the very end, he takes all the mushrooms.
Yeah, he eats too many of them.
And now, and that's not to get too much of on a tangent, but like going back to cliffhangers, what's happening with him in season 2? Like, what is he in a coma now? Is he gonna come back? Is like, I don't know. Is like his age gonna reverse?
Oh,
Right? Because
dude, that's an awesome theory. That would be
Yeah.
fucking crazy.
in a way, because if you think about it, in a way, like him being like rebirth, like
Oh,
over and over, that
yeah.
might be like.
Did
I-
you see Alex Garland's Men?
No, I didn't.
That is a very similar sequence, and I think it's kind of saying a similar thing. Yeah, dude, that's a good question. Yeah, I see. I'm so happy this got a season 2. I'm so happy. I about a week ago before they made the announcement, I think only a couple of days ago from the time we're recording this, I was so ready to come on here and fucking beg all of you to watch this show because I was so worried that a show with this much heart and passion behind it wasn't going to get picked up.
Yeah.
But I think luckily it's actually doing fairly well. I've seen it at the pretty much the top of Max every single week when I go to tune in.
Yeah.
So I guess it's fairly popular. The critical reception is fantastic. I don't know how general audiences are feeling about it. Might be a little too weird. But I mean, everyone's watching Severance, so I guess it's weird is in right now. Yeah, I'm so happy that we're getting a season 2 because I need to see where everybody goes here. I want to see where these characters go. I want to see their dynamics keep changing and shifting. I want to know what the end point of this story is. I really want to know where they leave us off, and I'm super excited to get there. So that's about all I have to say about it. You want to get in the scores?
Yeah, I just wanted to finish up my point.
Oh, sorry.
No, you were good. I was saying how this could be a potential critique because as of now, every time they went on a trip, including Jonas's trip, but Marshall and Francis and even Francie's mother, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every single time, I'm like, okay, I'm trying to lock in because I'm like, okay, this has to be significant.
Yeah.
Right? There has to be going to like almost like the Jungian, Freudian psychology of in our dreams, and the subconscious is more important than we think. Like even when it's not telling us something directly, you might see like a house in your dream, but it means that you're confined in your personality in the real world or some bullshit, right? And that's how I was taking every single trip sequence in the show.
Yeah.
I kept trying to lock in and be like, okay, because there has to be, right? I mean, as a audience or as a creator, you don't just put scenes like that with very specific imagery,
right,
just for fun.
I see what you're saying. Like, you don't want it to be trippy visuals alone.
Yeah, and as of now, I can't really. Then again, I haven't really returned to a lot of those trip sequences. I may rewatch the show and maybe I have a different outlook. As of now, though, I'm still puzzled if it is just trippy imagery for the sake of trippy imagery. Because I don't want it to be, because it's just too important.
Right.
And there's too much significance placed on it that I feel there needs to be.
Yeah, I hear you out. I think that's a super valid point. There's a couple examples that I can recall back to of where the trip sort of had significance to the plot, but that's mainly when we got into, it might just be the final episode where Marshall's kind of like drawing on the table. He sees Francis. Francis is able to kind of like perceive him in the other world. Yeah, in the trips themselves, I had a point, but it's escaping me. But I'll just say that I think that's a super valid point that you make. I think in the real world of psychedelics, I so far as I've heard, it seems like those trips or those experiences for these like psychonauts seems to be steeped in metaphor, like inherently in the real world.
Yeah.
So I do really hope that all of them have the meaning that we want to attach to them, and that they're actually like important for the character. If they go this route where it's sort of like interconnecting, I'm worried that those trip sequences will become more about the plot and less about the characters, and I think it could go that way, which might be a missed opportunity. But again, I mean, we'll see.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I'm ready to go into scores.
Hit me with it.
All right, I'm giving season 1 of Common Side Effects a solid 9 out of 10.
All right, perfect, dude. I 100% agree with you. This is a great 9 out of 10. I think this has more potential to be an incredible TV show than almost any season 1 that I've seen in the past like 5 years.
Yeah.
I am addicted to it. I hope it comes back quick, but I hope that they don't rush it, because the potential that this show has to do some beautiful things, create interesting conversations, have awesome character dynamics and amazing visuals. It's all there. It's all already here in season 1, and I want more and more and more of it for season 2. Cannot recommend it enough. 9 out of 10.
All right, cool.
All right, I guess let's wrap that up. So we hoped you enjoyed our review of Common Side Effects. We're reviewing all sorts of other stuff here on the Culture Wave Media Network. We have a YouTube, we have an Instagram, we're posting reels, we're posting long form video. We do not have an X. I got yelled at last time. We don't have an X. Do not check for us there. We're not there. We are on TikTok though, right? I think we're on TikTok. Perfect. We're on TikTok, on Instagram, on YouTube. Any show that you can imagine, we're posting about it, so go check it out. And with that said, I've been Sean Villa.
And I've been Vinny Albano.
Hope you guys take it easy.
This is The Culture.